All right, let's just jump straight into this. Before you do absolutely anything else today, I want to invite you to try something really simple with me. Just let your hands go still for a second. Let your shoulders drop. Seriously, whatever this day has already asked of you, whatever unresolved noise is just kind of echoing around in your head right now, you don't have to carry it for the next few minutes. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into a theme that is woven through all of ancient history, a narrative that literally begins before time itself, and it's all about finding peace in the noise. So just breathe slowly. Let the quiet come in. There's this ancient poem that says, "Be still and know that I am God," which is really the heart of Psalm 46:10. Well, we're going to walk through a story that embodies that exact profound idea. Because this story, it doesn't kick off with a chaotic explosion or some massive, deafening Big Bang. It begins in absolute deep silence. It begins before everything. And honestly, this foundational truth perfectly illustrates how the most significant things in our universe are actually formed.
Which brings us to part 1, creation out of silence. Think about before anything existed. No stars, no sky, no ground beneath your feet. Literally no sound, no color, no morning. There was only this vast, perfect silence. And then we get this ancient Hebrew word, bara. It means to create out of absolute emptiness. We're not talking about just shaping what already exists or rearranging some cosmic building blocks. It means bringing something out of total nothingness into being. And the wild part is, humanity was created out of this quiet emptiness on purpose. God didn't just shout us into existence from across the room. He leaned in close, closer than in any other act of creation, and breathed life directly into the first man. We were literally born out of quiet intimacy. And that makes the shift we see next so incredibly jarring. On one side of the coin, you have the original, quiet piece of Eden, right? Walking with God face to face in a cool, golden light of the day. Zero agenda, zero distance. But then on the other side, you get the arrival of noise, a serpent planting a tiny seed of doubt, the frantic rustling of leaves as humanity suddenly decides to hide. And then comes the loud, chaotic noise of shame, fear, and blame. The exact moment humanity decided, hey, we can define good and evil for ourselves, that quiet, beautiful openness was just gone.
Moving into our second section, chaos and the wilderness. So once that internal peace shatters, the noise of a fallen world spills out, and we can trace it right into the desolate wilderness. This is such a fascinating piece of history. The Israelites finally leave Egypt. The direct route through the desert to Canaan, the promised land, it should have taken 11 days, literally an 11-day walk. But instead, it turned into 40 years of wandering. Why? Simply because they let the noise of their own fear completely hijack the journey. Because when they finally looked at the promised land, they didn't see the promise. They just saw giant warriors and massive fortified cities. They said, "We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes." You can just feel the sheer panic in that statement, can't you? The loud, internal static of their own self-doubt completely drowned out the memory of the massive, quiet miracles God had literally just performed for them, like parting an entire sea to get them out of slavery. You can practically hear the friction in that wilderness camp. You've got this constant noise of complaint, crying out for the food they had back in Egypt, aggressively demanding water, just letting anxiety run totally rampant. But how does God respond to all that noise? Not with loud, chaotic anger. He responds with quiet, steady provision. Manna quietly appearing on the ground every morning, a silent pillar of cloud to guide them, water flowing from a rock. He was patiently teaching them to trust him, just one quiet morning at a time. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. Even in those chaotic, dizzying, circular seasons in the wilderness, God didn't drop a loud 10-step plan out of the sky. He didn't send a booming strategic roadmap. He just sent his presence. Over and over, the promise was simply, "I will be with you." And honestly, in the noise of our own wilderness seasons, that steady presence is usually what we're actually desperate for, whether we realize it or not. Let's look at section 3, the 400 silent years. After the final words of the Old Testament prophet Malachi, the heavens just went completely silent. For centuries, people had to be wondering if God was even listening anymore. 400 years. Actually, just pause whatever you're doing for a second and let the heavy weight of that number sink in. 400 years where the God who had been speaking through prophets for a millennium said absolutely nothing that was written down.
No burning bush, no still small voice, just a long, dark wait where their faith had to somehow survive without a single new word.
But here's the twist. Beneath the surface of that historical silence, things were absolutely not empty. It was active, quiet preparation. You had Alexander the Great spreading the Greek language everywhere, which created a common global tongue. Then Rome steps up and builds these incredibly durable, straight roads connecting the entire known world. Add in a Roman emperor decreeing a massive census. So when the ultimate message of peace finally needed to travel the globe, the universal language and the physical roads were already perfectly in place.
And I think this brings the whole thing right home to us. The silence right before the greatest arrival in human history wasn't God just being absent. It was God moving quietly behind the scenes, setting the whole stage. You know, the silence in your own life, it's not empty either. Those terribly quiet seasons are so often exactly when the deepest preparation is happening for whatever comes next.
Which leads us to our final section. Peace arrives in the dark.
So after 4 centuries of waiting in a violently occupied, incredibly noisy world, the silence finally breaks. But it's not broken by an earthquake. It's not thunder rolling off a mountain. And it's certainly not a booming announcement echoing in the halls of the Roman Senate. It was broken by a young woman's quiet, simple yes in a totally unremarkable occupied town. "I am the Lord's servant," she said. And with those quiet words, all of heaven moved. The contrast here is just staggering. Think about the deafening noise of the empire. Roman decrees displacing thousands of people, King Herod's violent paranoia, inns crowded to the absolute bursting point. Yet amidst all that chaos, the peace of God arrives in a quiet animal feeding trough, sleeping under a silent star, witnessed first by a bunch of outcast shepherds working the night shift. God has literally never been afraid of small, quiet beginnings. And as Jesus grew up, his entire ministry became this total inversion of worldly noise and power. He didn't seek the spotlight. He healed untouchable lepers with a quiet physical touch. He bypassed the religious scholars to choose ordinary, calloused fishermen. He stood on a hillside and declared that the kingdom belongs to the poor in spirit, the gentle, the peacemakers. He constantly withdrew from the loud, demanding crowds to just pray in secret. He operated entirely in the unhurried, gentle texture of daily existence. But honestly, perhaps nothing captures his true authority better than this one specific moment. Picture a violent, raging storm on the Sea of Galilee. The disciples are absolutely panicking, convinced they're going down. And Jesus? He's asleep. When they frantically wake him up, he doesn't shout back in a panic. He simply looks at the chaos and silences the wind and the waves with 3 words. Peace, be still. Even the chaotic, deafening noise of nature itself had to submit to his quiet authority. So as we wrap up this explainer, the big takeaway is that ancient reminder from Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. You can actually rest. The God who works through 400 silent years, who parts deep waters, who breathes life into the literal void, is the exact same God watching over your quiet night. You really don't have to carry the heavy noise of your day into your rest. The morning is going to come, and I promise you, he will be there when it does. Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder as we go. We live in a world that is completely, hopelessly addicted to noise, distraction, and chaos. So how will you intentionally choose to let the quiet in today? Thank you so much for exploring this incredible story with me. Find your peace out there, and I'll see you in the next explainer.